Gluten-free oatmeal protein cookies. They're coconut, quick cooking oats, chocolate chips, almonds.
Almonds, any other nuts?
Sorry?
Any other nuts other than almonds?
Yeah, awesome.
I've been waiting, because I wanted one, but I was like, can't have one, but I was like. Walnuts.
Oh, walnuts don't work for you.
No, you'd be calling, they're just a fire, like a kitty in one.
Oh,
The fire department's just, a block away.
I know, they're busy, they just don't want to call.
yeah, I try to make them higher protein and add
Oh,
an
yeah.
egg too.
Anything.
Liquor. Oh, thank you.
Delicious.
I'm gonna wish one of them. My highlighter.
You want one?
Yeah, you grab me a highlighter.
Mhm.
Thank you so much. Nothing?
No, there are a whole bunch of Sharpies.
All right.
I can't help you there.
I tried. I don't get it.
Ruth,
You've been.
I know. I wasn't, once again, I was not available.
Oh, no, really?
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah, I had to have more surgery.
It's the same cup.
It's okay. I think we're there.
Be careful on the ice this winter.
I was a little nervous parking and a lot of, I walked like a 90-year-old woman. I take it out of my car and I'm like. Is there water on?
I think you need to
Am I gonna
wear-
fall?
I wish you wear blood pressure shoes too.
Yeah.
But, you know, yes, forget professionalism.
Oh, no, no, it's not like feeling still.
Okay. Oh, they're good.
Their
They're
shoes.
good. Okay, good.
Yeah, oh, no, it's hysterical. My friends are like, wait, no, there's water. I'm like, I'm walking around and like, it was water on the floor. It's over the country.
Thanks.
Yeah, I know, but I'm never looking up at it.
I know.
One short by my count. Short.
No. One short. Get in your car, Lucy. Come drive here.
She asked me yesterday and I said she didn't have to.
Okay.
Oh, no.
It's not for our.
Why did you say
I
that?
think we don't need one, so.
You only care about your.
Yeah.
Did you think we,
She said she was planning to
I-
Zoom, so.
I didn't
said
know.
Change your plan. Basically.
I didn't know if you knew something I didn't know about people coming or something.
Yeah. Oh, it's James. No form.
No problem.
Do we have decisions we're supposed to make today?
Organization.
We were gonna make recommendations for target measures, but that's not mandatory.
Okay.
Just make
Well,
suggestions from those present.
who might still come? Have we heard from Andrew Haddock? Nobody?
Talked to him last week, but I don't know if he's coming in person.
Well. Probably just get started, right? I'm voting.
All right. I guess we'll call this meeting to order. You want to do, go around the room and do roll call?
Why don't we just introduce ourselves?
Okay.
Does that work?
Angela Kendall from the Easter Zone.
Who's
Maybe Kunhardt, Francisco.
Liz Revenue, Derry. Maggie Baldwin, Manchester DPW.
Sylvia Von Allen, I'm with the commission.
Adam Lesney with the commission.
Butch Laker, Manchester Planning. Nate Miller with the commission. David Tilton with the commission.
I spoke with the commission.
James Bayo, commission.
Suzanne Meaner with the commission.
Okay, and then online, right? Lucy, go ahead.
Lucy St. John, New Hampshire DOT. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. And we have Mac.
Mac Bevere, I'm the grants coordinator here at NHDES.
That's great. Thanks for being here. Caroline.
Hi, yes, Caroline Wilson, Dairy Planning Department.
Great. Thanks, Caroline. Craig.
Hi, I'm Craig Tufts from Central New Hampshire Regional Planning.
Nice to see you. Alex.
Hi, Alex Mello with the commission. Just kidding, town of Windham.
I'm like, wait, did you change jobs?
Funny. Mike Whitten.
Mike Whitten, Manchester Transit.
Cam.
Morning, everyone. Cam Perlman with the Planning Commission.
And Alex.
Yeah, Alex Hawk, just a member of the public in Manchester.
Thanks for being here.
All right, so the first thing on the agenda is the review of minutes from the November 21st and December 12th meetings.
Can't do anything with them yet.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll just move on to new business. The first thing is consideration of proposed 2025 regional safety performance targets.
All right, good morning. Can everyone see that in virtual on full screen?
It looks like it's loading on my end.
Oh, all right. Well, let's see. Display settings, is this duplicate slideshow? How does that
There we
look?
go.
All right,
Good.
thank you. All right, good morning, everyone. Today, Zach and I will be discussing the PM1 safety performance measures for 2025. As you may recall, we went into a deep dive on this presentation at the last TAC meeting. So today will be more of a review of the targets. We were hoping for recommendation for adoption by the MPO, but since we don't have a quorum today, we'll just go through the targets. And so performance measures fall under the Transportation Performance Management Program, which is a program that uses system information to make investment and policy decisions. And the FAST Act requires DOTs to measure and report performances in these five areas. Some, like safety, are adopted and reviewed every year. Others, like pavement and bridge, are every 4 years. Today, we'll be talking about the bolded one, safety. And these are the 5 federally required safety measures that we look at whenever we do PM1 performance measures: number and rate of fatalities, number and rate of serious injuries, and the number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. And how this process works is the state DOTs set performance targets. They hand those down to the MPOs, and the MPOs have 3 options at that point. They could support the state targets, they can adopt regional targets, or a combination of the 2. For 2025, SNHPC is recommending adopting regional targets for all of the performance measures, except for the non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. For that, we are recommending supporting the state target. And now we'll do a brief overview of the targets as we did last month. But before I hand it over to Zach, I just wanted to point out that SNHPC is in collaboration with other MPOs for the Safe Streets for All program. And one of the components of their action plan is a public commitment by a high-ranking official or governing body, in this case an MPO, of a commitment to reducing fatalities and serious injuries through a time period. This is SNHPC's commitment to that goal, with a halving of fatalities and serious injuries by 2035, and an aspirational goal of 0 fatalities and serious injuries by 2050. And I will turn this over to Zach.
Okay, so went over this last month, but you can see here we have the 5-year we have in red are all the different targets going back to 2019, and the X's are the I'm sorry, start again. The X's are the targets that we set for the different years, and the reds are the actual numbers that were attained. So this is the number of fatalities, and we can see that we were pretty much on target up until about 2021, and then we started kind of going off there, and it's increasing. The state target that is there in blue, and the orange target is below there, so a target of 20.4. Again, we're adopting a lower target because we're trying to beat that the SS4A goal of reducing fatalities and serious injuries to 0 by 2050. There we go. Again, here we have the fatality rate. The X's are the targets and the red are the actual occurred numbers. Again, we can see that we previously had a much higher target, and then in 2022 we opted to adopt a regional target because we were consistently below the state target. Since then we've been creeping up. We'll see what happens with that, but our suggested target for 2025 is 0.817, which is again below the state target. For projected number of serious injuries, I'm sorry, yes, that's right. We have been kind of flat over the time period, and we're largely keeping that in our target, but we are a little bit lower than the states. Something very similar with serious injury rate, again, very flat, kind of on target. Again, it will start going down. And for projected number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries, this is one where we're adopting the state target because the state target happens to be lower than the target we would adopt to meet our 2050 commitment. So we opted to just go with the lower state target rather than picking a higher target.
Thank you, Zach. All right, so here we have a table showing the state level 2025 safety performance targets. We have our safety measures over to the left. To the right of that, we have our 5-year rolling averages for 2018 and 2019. To the right of that, we have our trends, recent and desired, and we can see by the rolling averages and the recent trends that the state has seen a reduction in number and rate of fatalities in non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries, but a significant increase in the number and rate of serious injuries. To the right, the far right, is the state targets for 2025. These are expressed in decimal points since they are averages. And here we have a similar table showing SNHPC's regional safety performance targets for 2025. Once again, the safety measures to the left, followed by the 5-year rolling averages for 2018 and 2019. A little bit different from the state. We've seen an increase in all of the measures in the SNHPC region, except for non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries, which remain flat. To the right of the trends column is the state targets. To the right of that is the SNHPC recommended targets. And as we stated earlier, SNHPC is recommending supporting the state target in the non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries category and adopting regional targets for the other 4. I'd like to point out that the number here outside of the parentheses, so for the fatalities, 116.2 is the target. The number inside, the 20.4 for the fatalities, is our regional apportionment of that target. And here we have a table showing our accuracy, our track record. This kind of sums up the charts that Zach was showing. And as you can see, we've gotten a better degree of accuracy once we started adopting regional targets for some of our measures. And to sum it all up, here is the state and our SNHPC regional targets together. The state targets are to the left, followed by the SNHPC targets and the actions on the far right. As we said earlier, we're recommending supporting the state targets for non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries and adopting regional targets for the other 4. And thank you very much. We can open the floor for questions. Like I said, we were going to hopefully have an action item. We're recommending adoption of these to the MPO, but I guess we're just gonna have a discussion at this point.
You could have the consensus of those members present.
All right, do we have any questions or would like to take a consensus?
I do have a question on the first chart that was shown, it may have been the fatalities chart, the fatalities chart. The state target was below the actual, it looks like, yeah. So the projected number of SNHPC fatalities, the 5-year average seems to consistently be going up. State target is below what the 5-year average has been. What is the thought process behind creating a lower projected target than the state target?
Well, we have to have a lower one. I'm sorry, say that again?
Yeah, so if the 5-year average seems to be tending up, in this case, it seems this is the chart that I think is like the most egregious, but with the 5-year average trending up so much higher than what the state target initially is, what was the thought process behind taking a lower target than the state recommended target?
The thought process is part of the SS4A project or program, because we are adopting that, we have to adopt a plan to have reducing targets by up to a certain point. And this time we've chosen 2050 because it's, with our NTP, that's the timeline.
Okay, so that helps. That target would keep you on track to match your Safe Streets for All program.
Yeah, we have to.
Okay.
Yeah, and the state the state adopted theirs. We actually don't really have a lot of information on the state's process this year. There is a plan that will be released, but we don't have that yet.
Yeah, exactly. In order to be eligible for SS4A implementation funds, our action plan must have a long-term goal of 0. And our horizon year for the goal of 0 is 2050. So this target is kind of on the trajectory towards 0 to 2050.
So,
and it is aggressive.
Yeah, and that's what I mentioned last time too. Like
Yeah.
the target of 0 is very hefty.
It is
goal.
It is
lofty goal.
Previously, the guidance from federal highways has been to not be aspirational. Now we are being told we have to be
So
aspirational.
that's what I wanted to ask too, is like, when did that impossible number get picked? In the last 8 years or earlier?
The driving towards 0, you mean?
Yeah.
That's been around for quite a while.
Yeah, it's always been the aspiration has always been there, but there's never been a real commitment.
And there's an incentive there.
Yeah, I know it's there. I think it's just with real people with real things, like 0 is impossible. Why are we making ourselves nuts?
I mean, because there are cities and where they do have 0. There are areas that are getting down, and we should be moving towards that. Will we ever reach there? I don't know. Yeah, I have mixed feelings as well.
Yeah, okay. I don't know what those complacent societies.
For the Safe Streets funding, do you have to hit targets? Or
No.
is it setting them?
It's just setting it, as far as I
It
understand.
sounds like a commitment towards trying to move the dial
Exactly.
instead of just saying, oh, well, it's been going up, let's just let that keep going, but we'll call ourselves driving to 0. This just seems like more of a commitment, and maybe it will also create other strategies in getting there that, who knows what those might be, but.
And also tries to, hopefully creates an atmosphere where you go, well, there's 110 crashes again this year. What can you do?
Yeah, I'm all for it. That seems like a heck of a bend.
It would be,
Target.
yeah. I can understand that.
Luckily, I'm gonna guess some of us, like myself, won't be around in 2050, so I won't have to worry about it.
I have one question. Has there ever been a year in like the last 20 or so where the majority of our member communities have been close to 0?
No. I mean, when you come to fatalities, they don't happen. I think there's been like maybe 1 in Francistown in the last 15 years or something like that. And other towns have Goffstown, for whatever region, it has very low fatality rate. But in general, if you look at the region as a whole, no.
I mean, I think Gary's had 3 in the last like 6 months.
Right, yeah. And chances are, if you have an interstate, you're more likely to see them just because you have so much more volume.
That's without the interstate.
Yeah.
So, let's see, okay, all right. Thank you.
Should we check if there are questions from our virtual audience?
Yeah. Anybody online have any questions or comments?
We'd appreciate if there was a
Yeah, consent.
Consensus.
I think we should tell the MPO that even though we didn't have a quorum, that Lynn is in favor of it.
We've, in times where we haven't had a TAC quorum, we have noted the consensus of the TAC members present. So if there is such consensus, we would happily report that to our.
I would say aye.
Do we put it up for a formal vote or it's just general?
We can't take a vote on anything because we're one person short.
Yeah.
Bruce, how do you feel?
Yeah, I think we should.
Okay.
I'm good. I'm also a member. Okay. Any of our members online would like to? I think Lucy, are you gonna abstain or? Yeah. Right, and Mike Witten is a yes, and then I think we have Alex Mello is also a member.
I believe he's with the commission.
Yeah, I have no objections to the proposed. Thank you.
Okay,
Great. Thank you very much.
All right, so sounds like we have consensus on that. So we can move on to item number 2 on the agenda under new business, and that is the SNHPC Metropolitan Transportation Plan Survey results by James.
All right.
All right, can people see the screen or are they seeing my?
We're seeing presenter mode.
Okay, let me try one more time here. Here we go. All right, how's that?
It looks good.
All right, thank you. All right, so today I'm gonna share some information regarding the survey we did on transportation priorities over the fall period. I don't know if you guys remember, starting in October, we ran a survey till mid-November. And so we've been doing some work to analyze that survey, and we want to share some of those results with you. Just a quick recap on what this survey is associated with the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So I just want to remind people what that is and why we're doing it. So the MTP, or Metropolitan Transportation Plan, is a long-term strategic framework for vision, goals, and strategies to develop the region's transportation system. It also includes programming for projects. This is important because it helps guide investment decisions in transportation throughout the region. It ensures federal funding, which is a big one, and it promotes coordination amongst government agencies at the state, local, and federal level. So it's helpful in that way. We have a project webpage for the update to the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. It's called Connections 2050. And at the bottom of the slide, there's a link, and I'll plug it again at the end of the survey, to the project webpage, which is at bit.ly/SNHPC 2050. So a quick overview, there's more to the survey than just the survey. It really started with a review of plans. So we reviewed every master plan in the region, and we reviewed 22 different transportation plans, either state plans, RPC plans, or sort of area focused plans. We then took the information we gathered from that, went out and interviewed municipal staff across the municipalities and asked them about a variety of topics. You know, what's affecting them, what challenges are they facing, what changes are they observing, and we used the information from both of those to help develop the survey instrument. As I mentioned, the survey instrument went out in October through mid-November. We had nearly 500 participants and received over 12,000 points of data, which is awesome. So in this presentation, we'll talk about the key data and insights that were gathered from that process, cover the top themes, and identify linkages to the draft goals of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. We'll cover 5 themes today, ranking from the top 5 that we saw in the transportation survey. So those themes are transportation choice, housing and transportation as a theme, safety and efficiency, the region's economy, and then climate and sustainability. So we'll just dive right into the first one here, transportation choice. And I just want to give a little background on this, which is that, you know, it's widely understood in this region that there's a reliance on private automobile ownership to get around. You know, most people, for most trips, need to get in their own car to get there. And that's just something we need to acknowledge exists in the region. But we also see from the survey responses, from stakeholder input, and from the plans that exist, that communities want more options for mobility. And the focus appears to be around non-driver access to jobs, goods, and services, a concern for an aging demographic, and limited options for people who live in rural areas. So we saw that 2/3 of respondents selected this transportation choices as a priority. And we saw especially high numbers for lower income respondents, for residents within the city of Manchester, and for people over the age of 55. Within the survey and, you know, within the programming of the MTP, we'll see different strategies outlined for how to achieve these things. In the survey, we laid out 4 different strategies and asked respondents to select how efficient that is on a star rating system. So 1 star is not very efficient, and 5 stars is, you know, the most efficient. And we saw general consensus across all 4 of these strategies. I would note that was slightly higher for local transit and pedestrian network as favored and efficient strategies for meeting transportation choice, but complete streets and bicycle network were also very high, equally high or nearly as equally high consensus. To supplement that, I wanted to note some of the stakeholder input we heard about that, and they break down as follows. You know, staff noted that they'd like to expand local control on transportation matters. They'd like to explore the ways that we are shifting away from car ownership, either through aging out of driving or through younger people seeking car flexible lifestyles, i.e. moving to places where they don't have to depend on a car. That they would like to look at increased transportation options, including bike ped infrastructure. We know rail trails are very popular amongst people in the region, but so as we saw in the survey, so isn't transit options. And then, as I already mentioned, rail trails are seen as a valuable asset. And so we collected all this information in the survey. We've reported out on it here, and we've identified linkages to draft goals within the MTP. And I just want to cite some of those here. So one goal here is a transportation system that is supportive of the economy. And within that, there's an objective to increase affordability of travel by offering alternatives to the use of a single occupant vehicle. And so a lot of what we heard above seems to relate to that goal and that objective. Then more directly, we have a transportation system that is flexible and offers choice. And within that, there are 3 objectives that align with what we were hearing above. And those objectives are support the adoption of complete streets policy, increase viability of other modes of travel, such as transit and rideshare services and bike ped facilities, and then increase access to employment goods and services for non-drivers. All right, so theme 2 here, housing and transportation. A background on this, we know that affordability is an issue in the region, and we know that in a scenario where the region's population grows, that this will be exacerbated. Prices will go up higher than people's incomes will go up, and that's problematic. We also know that efficiency of land use plays an important role in traffic congestion, right? So if you put sort of poorly organized uses all over the place, and then we tell them that they need to connect to one another, you end up with issues around traveling mobility. And then another one here, infrastructure associated with roads factors into the location of new housing development. And, all kinds of development are affected by this, right? Does a road have water and sewer in it? Well, if it does, it will attract a certain demand for development. But in a road in itself, just creating access to land that is lower cost creates a pressure for development. And so these are important things to acknowledge. Again, nearly the same amount of people that chose transportation choice also chose housing and transportation as a priority. And this held true for respondents age 18 to 34 as well. These are the 4 strategies that were associated in the survey, associated with this priority, and they fall into 4 groups. And I won't read all this just to try to trim down on the time on this, but the 4 strategies were transit-oriented development, housing in village centers, housing in undeveloped areas, and housing near highway exits. And what we saw from the survey is that the top 2, transit-oriented development and housing in village centers, were very popular as an effective, through the eyes of the public, as effective strategies for tying housing to transportation. Now, the ones housing in undeveloped areas and housing near highway exits, it was a mixed review. So there were as many people who gave it 1 stars, 3 stars, and 5 stars. They were all about equal. So there was no clear preference for that as an effective strategy. So, if you were to pick 2 out of 4 of these, it would be the top 2. What did we hear from municipal staff? We heard that downtowns and village centers are regularly noted as desired areas for focusing growth in commercial development. We heard that public water and sewer is a prerequisite for more intensive land uses. So that'd be like multi-story apartment buildings, types of commercial development, say like a restaurant. Those things really do start to require public services. And then new housing development in urban areas is seen as bringing new demand for transportation infrastructure and transit services. So everything we just talked about in this housing plus transportation theme fits really well into an MTP goal of a transportation system that is land use smart. And the objectives there are to decrease travel demand through transportation program directed towards smart land use practices, a little redundant, but you get the idea. The second one here, increase support for housing development in locally identified growth areas through transportation investments and decisions. And that's to say, okay, well, when we decide how and where to program federal transportation dollars to meet need, we ought to be thinking about how those things might stimulate the development of new housing to meet the region's need for housing. And those things have an interplay. And then the last one here is implement transportation strategies that discourage sprawl and promote compact development. Theme 3 here, safety and efficiency. Background on this, safety is a high priority for both the public and government agencies such as this MPO, New Hampshire DOT. I'm sure our towns care about this. New Hampshire DOT, as you heard from Zach and Dave, has a vision as Vision Zero, which sets an ambitious goal for improving roadway safety. And that is further supplemented by all of the MPOs in New Hampshire working together to develop action plans for achieving safe streets and roads for all, which is incentivized by federal funding that's available. And then another thing to note, SNHPC maintains a process for congestion management. It's called the CMP. So that really relates to the efficiency side of things and capacity. Just under 2/3 of respondents selected safety and efficiency as a transportation priority, and 70% of minority respondents selected this theme. This was associated with 3 strategies: reduce congestion, safe street design, and maintenance first. And we saw fairly equal consensus amongst respondents that these were all effective strategies for achieving safety and efficiency. Some of the things we heard from staff, municipal staff about this is that, we'll go left to right here with this diagram, is that relative to pedestrian safety, the size of vehicles presents, or the increasing size of vehicles presents a danger to pedestrians and other non-vehicular road users. Infrastructure and facilities that support bicyclists and pedestrians is fragmented. So you might have a stretch that has safe facilities and then they disappear and then they reappear, and that presents challenges and limits the confidence that people have in using those facilities. General safety issues that were noted, vehicle speeding, probably no surprise, but that was also associated with aggressive driving and distracted driving, and that those things are all contributing to crashes, which are not necessarily roadway infrastructure issues. Those are more behavioral issues. An influx of new residents, which are unfamiliar with how the roads are structured and maybe not familiar with the rules and regulations in New Hampshire. And that these new residents, just by the fact of their presence, are increasing volumes on the roads. And we also heard, independent from, in each town, we heard something about an intersection that was a nuisance. That people would really wanted to see a solution to because there were frequent issues there. That was a common response from staff. Some other comments were around the efficiency of travel on state roads and the desire to sort of focus investment towards congested areas or known areas of congestion. So safety and efficiency has linkages to the draft MTP goals in 2 forms here. The first one is a transportation system that is safe and secure. And it has 3 objectives. The first one is to meet New Hampshire DOT's Vision Zero. Not so much that it explicitly says that in the objective, but the objective calls for a reduction in fatalities and injuries. The second objective here is to use data to identify safety needs and countermeasures. And, ideally, that's a really convenient for us because we're actually in the midst of this process with the Safe Streets for All exercise to identify and document safety issues so that they can be remediated. Collaborate with state partners and assist municipalities in dealing with these things. This kind of goes without saying. The second one is a transportation system that is efficient and reliable. So that's to reduce trip delays and increase reliability of transit, to keep infrastructure in good repair, prioritize demand management over capacity expansion. And the reason for that is it's just far less expensive. Yeah, to take a stretch of road that might be 2 lanes and move it to 3 or 4 lanes and add signalized intersections is a very expensive endeavor. And if there are ways to delay or eliminate the need to do that, we want to help towns, local communities find ways to do that. And then use technology to improve operations. So I've been going for a little bit now. There's a couple more themes here, but I don't want to go too long. How long have I been?
15 minutes, maybe.
Okay, well, we'll do the rest of these. You get the gist of this, but we'll go through the rest of these. The fourth theme was the region's economy. Some background here. COVID has changed the world. Online shopping has changed the world since 8-10 years ago. And here in Manchester, we have this emerging biofabrication industry, which potentially could upend, the economy of the region as we know it. More than half of respondents selected a thriving regional economy as a priority. And 62% of higher income respondents selected this theme as well, which was slightly higher than the general body of survey respondents. There are 4 strategies associated with the region's economy, and that's transit for job access, employment centers, freight reliability, and commuter incentives. And what we saw is fairly even consensus across these, although 2 and 3 kind of fell off a little. I'd say there was probably 10% less consensus for freight reliability strategies and commuter incentive strategies. But transit for job access and transportation investments for employment centers were seen as effective strategies overall. Stakeholder input on this, we heard a couple different things. A desire for access to affordable transit. We heard that work from home has changed the dynamic of how people travel throughout the week. We're seeing less intense morning commutes and maybe more distributed midday travel. We also observed that this is not true in every town. Some towns are a lot of working professionals and they can work from home. In other towns, there's a lot of manufacturing jobs. And so those people need to physically be at work every day at 7 a.m. And so this is not equal across the board. Improved bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure will connect people to local goods and services. That's probably more true in our urbanized areas where people can make trips by foot and reach destinations, maybe less true in far out places of the region. Online shopping, we heard a couple times that delivery trucks were tended to be a nuisance and maybe even a safety issue. And just a general observation that they are there, they are present. A desire for economic opportunities to be aligned with community character and benefit. So, what we heard is that there was some fear that people were using the idea of economic opportunity to advance private projects that maybe didn't have tremendous community benefit, and that really they'd like to see more vetting of things that are called economic opportunity to determine what their actual benefit is for society or the local community. And so I thought that was an interesting comment. Transportation for aging residents, which is something we heard over and over and over again. I think nearly every community noted their concern about the aging demographics' ability to move around once they age out of driving. Linkages to MTP goals. So for the region's economy, we have an MTP goal that is called a transportation system that is supportive of the economy. And it has 3 objectives that apply to what we just heard in this survey and stakeholder results. And those are support increased diversity of means and methods used for goods moving into, out of, and across the region. So that means, don't rely 100% on trucks, tractor trailer trucks to move stuff around, if there's a way we can integrate the airport and integrate rail and have ways to interact between those 3 different modes, that those things will only help to bolster the competitiveness of the region as an economic center. Second one here, increase the affordability of travel by offering reasonable alternatives to the use of single occupant vehicle. We already heard this one before, but it still stands to reason that, if we can get people, say in Manchester, to the mill yard on a bus, it benefits everyone, right? It reduces congestion for people who are driving, and it reduces costs for people who are taking the bus, and it reduces the amount of real estate we need to dedicate to surface parking. All those things benefit all stakeholders. And so, finding ways to offer feasible alternatives to driving the car stands to benefit everyone in the region, really. And then the last one here, increase programming for intermodal connections of highway, rail, and air facilities, which we talked about. Last theme here, we're almost done. This is climate and sustainability. The background here, we know that weather is becoming, severe weather is becoming more frequent and more extreme. This has led to rain events that have caused flooding, and in worst case scenarios has washed out roads and made them impassable. We also know that, the way we move about the region poses some health risks relative to air pollution, and that those things have a real impact on lifespan. There's a healthy body of evidence that talks about how fine particulate matter found in diesel truck emissions and automobile emissions is directly linked to reduction in lifespan. So. And then desire to preserve natural resources in sensitive environments. So less than half respondents selected climate and sustainability as a priority, but nearly 60% of respondents who are younger, 18 to 34, selected this theme. So there was some difference between the general body and a younger age demographic. There are 3 strategies associated with this transportation priority. That's the natural environment, air quality emissions, and infrastructure resilience. All 3 of them had a high level of positive consensus that these were effective strategies. What did we hear from stakeholders? Land conservation goes hand in hand with growth and is a useful tool for steering growth, which kind of goes back to the land use smart. Observing more frequent and intense storms locally, and these are causing damage and destruction to transportation and other things, emergency services. And it's also changing maintenance practices and costs. The region is primed to become a climate refugee destination. So something we heard is that actually, the Northeast might be an ideal place for people to try to move to as other parts of the region, the nation, become less and less livable. With more intense drought or more intense heat waves, more intense hurricanes or tornadoes, some parts of the country may become less competitive just because of the amount of destruction that's associated with those things. And that people may seek to move to New England as a way to have a more stable and predictable life. And if that happens, are we prepared for that? Extreme weather results in roadway infrastructure. Extreme weather results in roadway infrastructure damage. We already covered this. You guys know you get washouts, but even things like heat waves can affect the operation and lifespan of infrastructure. So this theme, climate and sustainability, has linkages to the draft MTP goals in the form of a transportation system that is environmentally sound. And there's three objectives associated with this. It's decrease environmental impacts of future transportation investments, increase the use of alternative fuels within the transportation sector, and advance climate change adaptation mitigation through transportation policy and programs. And you can understand why these three objectives tie back to resiliency and reducing harm. All right, so to close on this, public input results. We put a lot of effort into this. We collect a lot of data, and we're able to use that data to paint a picture of the outcomes for the region and desired outcomes, where people want to go versus where we are. We're able to use this data to inform revisions to the goals and objectives of the MTP that will be updated this year. And that hopefully, part of why we update the MTP is to make sure we stay relevant with the changes in the region and to help aid the policy committee, the MPO and the TAC in making decisions about how to invest transportation dollars in programming. And so hopefully, the survey results, the MTP will all aid in that process. Final thoughts, we went through this process. We used a methodical way of doing this: desk reviews, stakeholder interviews, public survey. And so we think that provides a lot of transparency and a lot of vetting to changes in the MTP. So that is the presentation. I did want to plug again the link to the project webpage, the Connections 2050 project webpage, which is at bit.ly/SNHPC 2050. And I did want to note that several staff helped with this. So Zach did a lot of analysis of the data from the survey, and Suzanne helped guide our lovely intern that we had over winter break, Liliana. And Liliana did a wonderful job putting all the formatting for this together. So this really was a team exercise. And as long-winded as I was with this, it would have been more painful if I had done it by myself. So that's it. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Versus expanding capacity, but I don't understand why that's the main one that's not expanding capacity.
Yeah, that's a great question. So expanding capacity project, would be widening a road or increasing the number of turn lanes at a traffic signal to deal with the number of cars that are coming through or making turning movements. And demand management really looks at the flip side of that in that it tries to identify ways to reduce the total number of vehicles that need to make those trips to begin with by offering alternative options. So it works really well where you have a road that maybe doesn't have a lot of congestion throughout the day, but then maybe for 20 minutes a day, that road has a ton of congestion, right? And so one of the things you might do is go approach an employer and say, hey, is it possible you can stagger your employee shifts by 30 minutes and let out over 3 different shifts, 30-minute overlap shifts? Now you've taken that peak traffic away without having to spend a lot of money to increase the infrastructure to deal with the traffic that's coming out of that place. So that's the core difference between those two approaches.
Could you go back to the climate slide where it talks about natural resources? I just wanted to hear what you mean by that. Is the solution natural environment? Yeah.
So you want to know what the natural environment strategy is?
Yeah.
So within our region, we have developed areas and we have undeveloped areas. And how we program transportation dollars determines the level of incentive to develop in one area or another, right? So we could build a road out into an undeveloped area that goes far out in the undeveloped area and create the incentive to develop that area by creating the infrastructure to support frontages and streets and other things. And when we make that choice to put roads in undeveloped areas, we are, indirectly creating incentives to develop that and turn it into whatever, a strip mall, subdivisions. Versus if we make other investments that are focused in developed areas, we shift where that land use development incentive exists. Instead of it being out in a forested area, maybe it's taking an old strip mall and turning it into a mixed use development. And we play a role through our transportation dollars in those kind of decisions.
James, if people are desperate to learn more about the survey results, is there someplace, a document perhaps that they can review?
Yeah, I forgot to bring that up. Thank you, Zach. So this survey is slightly premature in that we have not released the survey report yet, but we have put together an exhaustive report that will be on the project webpage very shortly. Ideally before the MPO meeting, because we'll do this again for the commissioners. And by then we'd love to be able to say to them, you can go to the webpage and check out all of the things that we've done. The desk review of the plans, the stakeholder interviews, and the survey report. You can read all of it in detail, everything, the methodology, all the results, it's all there. Thank you very much.
Does anybody online have any comments or any questions before we move on? No? Okay. All right. So next up is an overview of the SNHPC Complete Streets Model Policy and Resolution by Adam.
Is that visible online?
Yep.
All right, thanks. So today I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of our Complete Streets Model Policy and Resolution, which we've been working on for the last year and a half. This was last presented at TAC in May by Tammy, who we have to give a lot of credit to. She was the engine behind this for quite a while. And she led this effort until she left us in September.
I think you can go more and hide.
All right. So a little bit of background on our involvement with Complete Streets. We started about a decade ago now with our original Complete Streets Toolkit, which was a robust 100+ page document that Sylvia, Cam, and I primarily worked on. The three main sections were the planning and policy section, design and engineering, and then we had our 3 pilot projects. And if anyone remembers, those were in Francistown, Deerfield, and Wyndham, where we went out and did some pop-up projects on the roads in those communities. And we documented that in the original toolkit. So in 2023, we thought it was time to update the toolkit, catch up on what has happened with Complete Streets around New Hampshire. There's some updated design guidance nationally, and we included a lot of best practices and Complete Streets examples from around our region and around the country. As part of that effort, we formed a TAC subcommittee that led to the policy and resolution templates. So the subcommittee was formed in September of 2023 and met several times over just over a year period. That included Manchester DPW, Derry Economic Development, DES, Greater Manchester Chamber, and a couple of representatives from Fuss and O'Neill, who's the local engineering firm included on the project. We used nationwide best practices from Smart Growth America and several of the highest rated Complete Streets policies, including Howard County, Maryland, and El Paso, Texas, to inform a template that could work for our region. And that's what that committee met to work on for that year. So I'll quickly go through the policy template. The vision that I'll read off here. Through this policy, the town or city confirms its commitment to ensure the safety of all those using the transportation network, including the most vulnerable road users and those using transit if applicable. The town or city shall consistently support, plan, design, construct, and operate an interconnected street network that safely accommodates all anticipated users and transportation modes. To accomplish this goal, the town or city is committed to prioritizing transportation investments, which make walking, biking, public transit, and shared mobility safe, attractive, and viable travel options. So what I'll do now is I will go into the actual documents and share that. So this is our model resolution. We have, I believe, 17 statements that we vetted with the subcommittee. I won't read all of them, but I picked a few to highlight here. And I should say that this is customizable. This is based on best practice, but a town or city, if interested in adopting this, can tweak to fit their own needs. This is not the highlighted version. So one of the things we wanted to stress is the variety of travel modes, and personal choice and safety, the economy, natural resources, and connectivity. Enhancing access to local businesses, reinvestment, increasing property values and employment, and stimulating private investment, especially in retail districts, downtowns, and tourist areas. So making the economic development connection, that seems to be an important thing to hit on with a lot of towns. And the active lifestyle element, physical activity, social connectivity, as we saw during COVID, that was increasingly important. A sense of community belonging, lowering risk of obesity, chronic disease, mental health, and promoting wellness. So that's another area that we focused on in the resolution. And we also put in this line about should not negatively impact affordability of the neighborhood for current residents, given all that's going on with the housing crisis and rapidly increasing values. So this is just a few highlights. I do have some printed out copies here, and this was sent out prior to the meeting, if anyone wants to delve in more. And now I will share the policy. So the vision is what I just read, overview of what complete streets are and who they affect. We have our scope here. Sorry about that. There's a version of this that I had highlighted certain areas, and I think I opened the wrong one. I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong folder. Here we go. All right. So for some reason, it's not showing the highlights, but if I hover over, I think I get them. So yeah, this in the scope, we talk about kind of the same thing I said in the resolution: reduced transportation costs, improved access to goods, services, and social gatherings, enhanced equity, and physical and mental health. There's a section on exceptions, so not every single street is going to be complete, despite wanting to do complete streets as much as possible. Conflicting or competing needs. I thought this was an important line to highlight. When there are conflicting needs among users and/or modes, safety shall be the highest priority, particularly safety for the most vulnerable street users, pedestrians, cyclists, children, seniors, and people with additional accessibility needs. And then motor vehicle speed, flow, and driver convenience shall not be prioritized over safety for vulnerable street users. As many of us know, for years, roads were designed for cars and cars only in many cases. And this aims to kind of push back against that and emphasize safety over speed and wherever possible. So creating a network, the entire trip should be safe and comfortable. As James mentioned in his presentation, if there's a bike lane here and then it just suddenly ends and then picks up again, that's a deterrent to folks wanting to use that piece of infrastructure. Not every street necessarily needs to provide separate accommodations for every mode, but a network should be in place so that likely trips can be made by walking, biking, public transit, and driving. We have a coordination and engagement section here. Some of the agencies that we'd like to reach out to, or we recommend the town reach out to in developing this policy. And then this line I highlighted: for each capital project within the scope of the policy, input shall be sought from affected stakeholders prior to setting the scope of the project. We have a section on design guidelines here, highlighting using national guidance from FHWA, AASHTO, and NACTO, which have revised their guidelines in the last 5 to 10 years. We added the section on public right-of-way accessibility guidelines. I have not really taken a deep dive into this, but this has to do with ADA type guidelines. Context sensitivity. So improvements should consider the scale and character of the community and strive for connectivity between communities based on the expected transportation needs. Basically, you don't want to put something that belongs in Manchester in New Boston. It's completely the wrong setting for it. Again, emphasis will be placed on gathering input from residents of all ages and abilities, as well as traditionally underrepresented populations in the project area. An example of this is the Maple and Beach Street project corridor study that was conducted about a year ago. And then we have our performance measures, quite a list of short, medium, and long-term measures. So a few to highlight: developing a complete streets plan for the road network, a transportation services plan with an emphasis on older adults, people with disabilities, and those who cannot drive. And the medium term, tracking miles of pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure installed or repaired, and conducting road safety audits for intersections as identified with fatalities or serious injuries. And a few long-term ones here: tracking increase in outdoor recreation and increased physical activity. Our bike ped counts are a way we've done that, and I will be telling you more about that in a few minutes. I think I highlighted one more here: percentage of investments in underserved communities, which is something that Zach has been tracking in our various projects over the last few years. We have the last section is implementation. Some of these strategies, again, looking at the national or state level guidance that reflect current best practices, and establishing a complete streets advisory committee and identifying funding mechanisms. So that's a pretty quick overview of the policy. I have one more slide here. Sorry for all the back and forth. Oh, and there's a story map too. Let me get to that in a minute. So the next steps, as determined by the subcommittee, present this to the TAC, which of course we're doing today. Share the story map, both with the TAC and more broadly, which we will be doing. Follow-up check-ins or presentations with municipal safety committees, DPWs, and or a webinar or Q&A with municipalities considering adoption. And then finally, an idea we had was a video summarizing complete streets in New Hampshire, success stories and testimonials, which might be a way to reach a different audience or in a different way. So given what we know about complete streets, does anyone in the room or online have other ideas on how to do outreach or encourage adoption of this policy or resolution in our region?
Sitting here thinking, I'm like, these are the things like, I'm always wondering, what do I have to do for like staff report to the planning board? And director updates, these are good things to bring. And provide this to the board so that it can go into the public. Because people do watch, strangely enough, when it's fascinating, they watch our meetings. So.
Yes, they do. I mean, we've thought, about creating a shorter video to describe some of this, but certainly, Adam and I could do a road show, and if any community is interested in, like, what would this look like for our community? I mean, you can see all the places where all you do is substituting your community's name. We could even do a rough draft of what that might look like and work with, if you had a safety committee or something like that, we could work with you in creating one that would be sort of just for your community. So it all depends on, where a community's at. Sometimes something happens and next thing you know, there's a cry out for safer roads or something like that. And so we're happy to work with you or come to your planning board, whatever it might be, but yeah. I mean, it's certainly a lot of good work here and just so easy for anyone to just sort of adapt that to their community.
So for all intents and purposes, the policy template that we received, it's ready. Like if a municipality was ready to implement something like this, I mean, this template is ready for us.
Yeah.
Okay.
You sent it out to everyone?
Yeah, it went out
on the
with the
town?
meeting
So
materials.
everyone has that. I mean, we can give it to you in Word if that's easier.
No, I'm just thinking about, well, I don't know how we would approach, presenting this. And I know Kristen was part of the subcommittee, so she's probably well versed in this whole thing. But just, one of the things I noticed in your goal for the short term is to update the site and subdivision regulations to include complete streets elements, and Manchester is going through their land use codes, which will then trigger updates to the subdivision regs. So trying to get this, before the appropriate people, before we get to that point, so we can take this opportunity to incorporate some of it. But I mean, that's something I guess we'll have to figure out.
Yeah.
Weird interplay too between our DPW and our planning. So it's something we would have to determine kind of who's responsible for that or how that gets passed.
Right. And would it be well received? Like, I don't know what the process would be to even get.
There's nothing wrong with it. It's done only good things to help. It's just whether or not you can fit. So I see this being perfect for Manchester. to give it to both of the guys, both of those teams that don't get along well with each other. You are the intermediaries who are able to get to each of them separately, and then they will have to work together, because this is like good. In Francistown, we have a little bit of a problem because we have such narrow roads with, you know, it's gonna be harder to implement some of the things, but it still has things we can pull from and work towards being able to fully implement them. I can see nothing of good coming out of this. It's very, I like the way it's laid out.
Thank you.
You can tell the design was done by Tammy because it has two dogs.
I did. Two dogs, but no horse.
I think, you know, when it comes to the education portion, because I know sometimes there's that fight between planning and DPW. You know, as far as, you know, the streets and the designs and things, I think it's important in the education is to note that complete streets doesn't always mean, well, we want to make the road wider so we can put the, you know, the bike lane or whatever. You know, there's ways to do complete streets that maintain your existing width, but incorporate those safety elements. And I think that's the message. When you have towns where, you know, you can't, you know, where you get that immediate pushback. Well, we're not widening the road there. It's not, you know, you're like, okay, we'll pull back a little. There's more to it than just widening and adding this. So that's important.
Yeah.
So we get that pushback, like that. I've been facing that pushback.
I'm sure. Yeah. Depends who's at the table, right?
It does.
It really depends who's at the table. And I think for like, Linda, for your situation where you're a more rural community, you have such a different situation, but that's where I think the resolution may help more, which is sort of the idea of it versus more specific.
I see this complete streets as being an idea more than a physical thing. And when you're selling it to two opposing boards that have, in their minds, you know, want to be the top guy, they have to, for a moment with this, they should be able to stop wanting to be top and recognize that they each have their individual roles which are going to get us here. We're all about making people safe and feel comfortable and love their community. What's wrong with that? You ask them. Why will, you know, your job is to look at this and see where you can go for us to get us here. And then they have to work out. It's hard with the egos. But I think this should be able to get them past that. And once you get them past that for this, in the future, you might find it easier for them to work with on, you know, I see it being like a stepping stone to making, a wonderful place to live, just because people will have to work to meet these things better. And the next project will be easier because now it'll be kind of. But it's the idea part. Fascinating.
I think just having that conversation is a good start. So that's where, like, if this was at a planning board meeting where you don't have a huge agenda, there's not a lot of stress at a meeting, but you want to talk, almost a working session, just talk about the idea, we can come in and have that conversation. So it's more of a conversation. And so that starts the ball rolling. So happy for any of the communities that we can work together on. All right.
Were you gonna talk about this?
I was, but with
Time.
being with time, I'm gonna move on to the bike ped if that's okay.
Yeah, let's save the story map for next time. So, and that's really exciting stuff.
And that was gonna be an Anthony thing, and unfortunately he's ill today, so I would be doing a abbreviated version anyway. Okay, so let's get into.
It's probably further down. Scroll
Right.
down. Great.
All right, so bike ped counting 2024 season in review. We had a successful year last year, and this is there's Anthony standing out on the New Boston Rail Trail shivering as we set up our long-term count there. So by the numbers, I did this presentation last year. I just added 2024 on here. As you can see, the amount of counts we've been doing has increased quite a bit. 2017, we purchased our first eco counter. In 2019, bought a second one, and started in more on trails. And then ever since it's kind of been roughly a third sidewalks and 2/3 trails. In 2024, we purchased several Trafex counters, and those we use they do not have direction, so it's just one number of how many people have crossed the infrared beam. So they give you less data, but they're also a lot cheaper and a lot more, I guess, versatile. So we've been using those in addition to our original 2 eco counters. We now have counted at 76 locations. That includes a lot of one-off town requests. So really, there's maybe 20 to 25 locations where we've counted over and over again. And about a third sidewalk and 2/3 trail, like I said. We had 2 long-term counts in 2024 on the Rockingham Rail Trail, on the eastern part of Manchester, and on the Derry Rail Trail. And I'll get into that data in a moment. So here's a map that Anthony created, just showing a snapshot of where our counts were last year. The blue counts are trail counts, and the orange are sidewalks. The 2 purple stars here are our long-term counts, Bowers Road and Derry, and then the Rockingham Rail Trail, right around the I-93 ramps. So the Manchester Trail Study, we looked at all 3 of the main trails in Manchester, Piscataqua here to the west, Rockingham to the east, and then the South Manchester Trail. It's the 3rd time we've done this. We put these counts out in late April through mid-June. And some basic data here. Piscataqua Trail in the red. The numbers have gone down quite a bit in 2023. We think that's because of a construction downtown that prevented people from getting onto the trail going west. But they rebounded nicely in 24. South Manchester Trail, which has been expanding both to the south and the north of what you see here. Those numbers have gone up quite significantly, up 31% since 23 and 74% since 2022. The Rockingham Trail was down 25% and down 7% since 2022. We're not really sure why that is, but can't win them all, I guess. Manchester sidewalk data. We have counted on the sidewalk over here at City Hall for the last 7 years, right around the holiday period, so December 23rd through January 2nd. And you can see quite clearly here, the volumes were consistent, and then COVID happened, dropped off very significantly, and it has been growing ever since. And then this past holiday season, we were up to about 88% of the pre-COVID volumes on the sidewalk, which is, I think, quite something after taking all these years. It's another way of looking at it. This is day by day. So each cluster of columns is a day. This is December 23rd, 24th, 25th, etc. The pink lines are the 2024-25 counts that we just counted. Several of the days, the 25 counts were the highest, like it's low overall, but Christmas Day was the highest, and New Year's Eve was the highest we counted on New Year's Eve in the last 7 years. And many of the other days too were among the highest, almost back to pre-COVID volumes. We also did some Elm Street bike lane counts this year. We left them out from April through September, and here's a picture of where they were located. This is just north of Valley Street, if you're familiar with that area. So we actually used a traffic counting box and attached them to 2 10-foot tubes, and we got some interesting data. We had one in both the northbound lane and then the southbound lane over here. The northbound lane had a much higher volume. What you're seeing here, the dark part of the columns is the northbound traffic in the northbound lane, and the pink is folks going southbound in the northbound lane. as you can see, it was about half of people were going south in the northbound lane. We do want to verify that in 2025. We're going to set these out again. It seems like an excessive amount of people going the wrong way. It might be true, it might not be. In the southbound lane, the volumes were lower and a much smaller percentage of folks were going the wrong way. One idea we had is that there's a lot more neighborhoods and destinations east of Elm versus west, which might explain why northbound was so much more used.
I have done this in Queen City Bike Collector is just a little bit south of that counter. And if you want to get back into the neighborhood, the safest way to do it is to contra flow on that side of the road and then hook a right in the first road that connects to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So it is, even though it's against the traffic rules, this is the safest way to get back into the neighborhood.
Is it, what happens if, because that's off the sidewalk, right? That's just on the shoulder.
This is the bike lane.
So.
Can't see the marking, but that's
Right, right. But what if someone drives over it? Then what does that register as?
I don't think it would register as a bike, but we would have to,
We should check that.
yeah, we should.
But they would be going northbound anyways, I would.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
wouldn't see,
Because,
right,
so that would
I'm
have,
just curious, you know.
yeah. So this is just another way to look at the previous chart. Here's our little diagram. This is Valley coming in and the counters were here and then on the side with the bank parking lot. So average daily traffic southbound was 40, northbound was 62. Total traffic 5,600 and about 8,800, but that was over the course of 5 months. Most popular time, afternoon, not much of a surprise there. And then the wrong way traffic, like I said, it was a shockingly high number. So we're gonna verify that next year, or this year. So we've also done these year-over-year count summaries at several of our locations. We've now been counting for several years. This is an example, Dow Street in the Mill Yard here, or I should say the crossing between Dow Street and Canal Street. These are our average daily volumes by year. There was a spike in 2022 for some reason, but it's been pretty consistent. We count this in March and April to be as consistent as possible. Our average hourly weekday volumes, you can see we have a morning peak, a lunch peak, and an evening peak. Folks walking to work in the Mill Yard or taking a walk at lunch, getting some fresh air or whatever. And then the weekend volumes, I use the same scale here to show how it goes down on the weekend. There's very little going on in the Mill Yard on the weekend, apparently. So that's something that is notable. And on a different note, the same type of summary, but for a trail count, this is Heads Pond Trail and Hooksett. Average daily volumes starting in 2020 here. Again, this is COVID had just started, so people were antsy to get out, take walks. We have the highest volume of any year. It went way back down in 21, and it stayed fairly consistent, around 220 users per day. Again, this count is done in April as well. Average weekday volumes, quite consistent through the day. It picks up a little bit in the afternoon. And on the weekend, you can see it's much higher. In 2020, in the COVID year, there was a huge spike in the afternoon. But since then, volumes are kind of up and down throughout the day on a weekend. So our long-term study, as I mentioned, we did the Rockingham and Derry rail trails in 2024. This is a seasonal comparison. I adapted this from last year's presentation. January, as expected, by far the lowest trail usage. I'll mention again that these are all on the same scale of 40 here, so you can see better the variation. April, there's a morning peak on both trails, Derry being the black line here and Rockingham being the blue. In July, there was a big spike in the afternoon in Rockingham or on the Rockingham Trail, and as opposed to a morning spike in Derry. Not really sure why that is, just interesting to note. And then October patterns are fairly similar to April, except there's less of a morning peak and it stays consistent from about noon through 6 in the evening.
Derry almost has like a commuter sort of.
Yeah, in the afternoon, it looks like that. I'm not sure why it's so low in the morning.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, Derry, you're right.
Yeah, Derry, because there's that morning peak and a little bit of a peak.
Yes.
Later on in the afternoon.
Yep.
Where is the Dairy's location?
It's Bowers Road, just south of downtown.
It's a little bit same in April.
And it's another way to look at it, isolating the two, this is Rockingham on the left now for all 4 seasons and Derry on the right. And I'll also mention sometimes these peaks, it could be 3 or 4 days where there was some event or something, and that will skew the whole overview of it.
During the millennium, were the counters out during the millennium race?
Is that the one in April?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, there was a count.
Like a huge race that goes through there, yeah.
Yeah, we had a day in April in Derry that it was like 1,000 people. So usually what we do when we see that is we verify with the local trail group, was there anything you know of that was taking place? So we have a version of the data with that in there and a version without, because we think it's valid, just it's known as abnormal but valid data. Our story map, this was going to be Anthony. I don't know if
Why don't we wait on
we
next
can-
time because we're.
yeah,
almost
we're out
hitting
of time. And this is just about, did I miss a slide? Yeah, there's one more slide here. So in 2025, we have long-term counts as requested by New Boston, Manchester, this is South Manchester Trail at Perimeter Road, Londonderry at Verani Way, which is just off of exit 5. And then the Wyndham Depot, where we've counted in the past, and that has been our most used trail in the region. Actually, I think I missed another slide too. Yeah, so highest volumes in the region. I did this last year. Element City Hall, even during the winter, is by far our highest count, followed by Hanover Street at the Chamber of Commerce. And then Wyndham and Derry Rail Trails, followed by the others are all quite even. South Manchester, Goffstown, Piscataquag. And these symbols indicate what season they were counted in. So we do take municipal input, and our short-term counting will be ongoing 3 weeks at a pop for our short-term counts. In addition to the 4 long-term counts that will be out there, we install them in December, and they'll be out there until December of 25. And then, of course, the story map, which we're going to save for another day. So that's all I had.
Questions?
Yeah, so if any of the communities would like a specific trail or sidewalk and month, whatever timing, please let Adam know, and I'm sure he'll try to accommodate that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so the last thing on our agenda is an update on the Transportation Alternatives Program.
Yeah, just a brief update. We talked briefly last month that New Hampshire DOT has solicited for transportation alternative program applications. There was a letter of intent deadline in December. In our region, 4 letters of intent were submitted, 1 from the town of Goffstown, 1 from the town of Windham, and 2 from the city of Manchester. Letters of intent are not binding, so all 4 of those may become applications, or none of them may become applications. But we'll see. The application deadline is January 24th, and after January 24th, when the applications are submitted, a lot of the prioritization process happens at the state level. However, we have at the regional level 1 piece of that statewide process. So we actually need to go through a regional process to evaluate and prioritize whatever applications come in. Our deadline to submit regional priorities to New Hampshire DOT is April 25th. So you can expect in February, March, and April, us to be going through a process. You'll hear a lot more about this in February. We're getting our ducks in a row right now. But we will outline our regional process in February to evaluate and prioritize TAP applications. As part of that, we would likely envision applicant presentations as part of a future TAC meeting, possibly in March. So more to come on that. My update here is that we had 4 letters of intent submitted in the region, and applications are due in, let's see, 8 days. So more to come.
Yes, that's it. We don't need to formally adjourn right now.
Close it down for.
Thanks, everybody, for coming in.
Thank you.